Hello everyone, it's Becca from Becca Books and Boo Gel. If you're watching this video the day it comes out, it is April 14th, 2024, which means that 112 years ago, the RMS Titanic was traveling from Ireland to the United States and struck ice. A few hours after that happened, it sunk on April 15th. I first became fascinated by the Titanic when in 7th grade band we were distributed a piece of music called Carpathia. I didn't know what the Carpathia was, but I learned in playing that piece of music that it was the ship that rescued the survivors of the Titanic on that fateful night. I loved playing that piece of music, but I also, ever since that point, loved hearing and watching and reading Titanic stories. So I decided in this vlog today that I will be reading various Titanic books that I could find. So I have found 5 books just by searching or seeing other people read them that I decided I wanted to read. The first is a horror, I believe. It's called The Deep by Alma Katsu. Don't know much about it other than it's a horror. This is a YA book about the Titanic. It's called A Million to One by Adiba Jagadar. I believe a heist takes place on the Titanic. That's all I know about this one. Iceberg is a middle grade fiction about the Titanic. Also, I think some mysterious elements, but I'm excited to see this story from a middle grader's perspective. We have A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice by Rebecca Connolly, which is actually the story of the Carpathia. So I'm very excited to get to this one. And lastly, one that kind of spurred the idea of this vlog was a book that I had on my shelves. I believe I found it at some library book sale for probably $1, dirt cheap. And this is Titanic, The Long Night, a novel about the unforgettable disaster by Diane Ho. I have no clue what this is about, but I think we follow a few different perspectives in first class and in steerage. So I'm excited to hear all of these stories about the Titanic. I think it is so interesting that authors can take this one historic event that happened and come up with so many different stories, and I'm looking forward to chatting through these books with you in this vlog. So let's get started. Okay everyone, so I have my friend here with me. Her name is Lily, and we were just talking. We think we look like sisters. Can you see it?
Yeah.
I see it in the hair color for sure. Okay, so I saw Lily reading the book Iceberg by Jennifer A. Nielsen, and I decided I wanted to include it in this Titanic vlog. And I'm here to ask Lily why you think I should read this book.
I think
Tell me
you
about
should read it because it's very interesting. It tells you more than just like the Titanic. Like it just was a ship that sank. It tells you more than that. It tells you like all the like secrets kind of the ship.
Ooh.
And it's got like a mystery in it. Like I'm not gonna give too many spoilers, but there's people who aren't supposed to be on the ship. There's people who are like stealing money and stuff. So, and then she's hearing messages, and so yeah, it's a really good for somebody who likes historical fiction, and it's really good for someone who likes mysteries or survival stories, like, because it's all of those things in one. So
cool.
Yeah,
Sounds super thrilling. Did you read it really quick? Or
well, no, I didn't, but
okay.
I wanted to. I just didn't get a lot of time because
okay.
like it sucks me in. I don't want to stop reading it.
Okay, well that makes me really excited to read it.
Yeah.
So I am gonna pick it up. Thanks, Lily. I am just about 5 chapters into Iceberg, so not far at all, like probably 30 pages in. And I just wanted to give a quick update about what this book is about. So we follow our young character Hazel. Her and her mother are very, very poor, and they decide that their only option to try to survive in their life is to get Hazel to America to live with her aunt and work at a garment factory. And so Hazel makes her way to the Titanic in April of 1912, and she doesn't have enough money to buy a ticket to board the ship. And so she sneaks on in somebody's trunk in their luggage, and she makes it onto the Titanic. She decides that in order to make some extra money for her family, she is going to write the story of the Titanic because she assumes that newspapers and magazines and everyone will want to know and get the first-hand story of someone on the ship once they arrive in New York. So that is what her mission is going to be, but she's going to tell the truth about the ship because she already found out a secret about the Titanic, that the ship was on fire. One of the coal bins or something was on fire. So she is going to tell the truth, kind of like a gossip story of the Titanic, what is actually going on the ship. And so I'm excited to see what other secrets she finds out. So I will keep reading and give you an update once I'm farther on in the book. I am just about 2/3 of the way through Iceberg and I'm loving it. This main character is just so fun and she's so driven and she really wants to be a journalist, and in order to do that she needs to break the rules a little bit, and she is so curious and asks all of her questions, even at very inappropriate times, and I just love her for that. So let's see, she has made a couple of friends on the Titanic. One is a porter on board and he has helped her find a room, and he's just lovely. I love him. His name is Charlie. And then she also made a friend in first class that she met off of the ship and then reunited with on the ship, and through her she has found this mystery, or this crime that is going to be committed. There are these imposters in first class that are trying to steal money from some of the rich people, the first class people, and gamble and cheat and yeah, make money any way that they can. And Hazel knows about them and they know about Hazel, and so that's just like a really fun dynamic too. So yeah, I am intrigued. The one thing I always notice about Titanic books is, or Titanic stories or movies or anything, it's like, what's gonna happen at the end? Well, we all know what's gonna happen at the end. Obviously, the ship is going to sink, but it's still thrilling along the way to see how these characters will get to that and get through it or not. So yeah, really enjoying my time and can't wait to finish this soon. I finished Iceberg and really loved it. 5 stars. It just got more and more exciting as the story went on. Hazel's curiosity kept helping her and her friends with hitting the iceberg and the sinking of the ship. She knew a lot about the ship and had asked serious questions if there were ever an accident like this, and then it happened. So she just knew what she needed to do in order to survive, and I just loved it. It was intriguing. Again, I always say about Titanic stories, like, you know what's going to happen in the end. Obviously the ship goes down, but you still want to watch and see how it all takes place through these characters' eyes. So I'm excited to read more Titanic stories, and happy that I started off with this one. It was a really great intro into the Titanic blog, and yeah, looking forward to more Titanic stories and what other elements other authors can bring, because this had the youth side because we were following young characters, but then it also had mystery and intrigue and suspense because of stealing money, and there were gamblers on board, and Hazel just kind of like was a fly on the wall watching it all happen. So yeah, loved this. Excited to see what comes next for Titanic books. I'm here at the piano because I feel like one song, if I were to say Titanic to you, what song would come to your mind? It would be My Heart Will Go On. So I'm going to play this beautiful song for you, and I don't know if I'll sing. We'll see. I feel you. on to a new Titanic book. This is called The Deep by Alma Katsu. And I have not heard anybody talk about this, and I don't even know how it got on my radar, but I'm reading it. This is obviously a historical fiction because it takes place on the Titanic, but it has a different spin on it because we actually are following our main character, a young woman, after the Titanic. It starts in 1916, and our main character, Annie, is in an asylum of sorts. She is released from the asylum to go back to work, and she will be working on the Britannic, which is the sister ship to the Titanic. She worked on the Titanic in 1912 and was a maid of sorts to some of the first class cabins, and she survived the sinking of the ship. And now she's going back onto the Britannic to work as a nurse because it is World War I time. She has met one of her friends who worked on the Titanic with her and is now working on the Britannic, and they have reconnected on the Britannic. And then she sees someone on the Britannic that brings her back to some time in the Titanic. So there is a time jump back to 1912, and we get the start of their Titanic journey. For Annie, who is a maid on the ship, she is there before any of the guests arrive, so she gets to see the ship in its full glory, brand new, with nobody in it. She is at some staff meetings right at the beginning, and then the guests start to arrive. She immediately gloms onto this young family. She sees a young father struggling with an infant baby, and she wants to help in any way she can. She helps him get to his cabin, and really starts to, I don't know, feel entranced by this family for some odd reason. I think she finds the guy attractive, but it doesn't explicitly say that ever. Anyway, so she gets that family all settled in their cabin, and then we follow some other characters. There are this team of fighters, like boxers. We follow them, and we also follow the Astors, which, you know, John Jacob Astor and his wife were on the ship, some of the most wealthy people from the United States. And we follow their help boy. What's that called? He's not a servant, I don't know. Anyway, they follow him. And there's just something odd going on. Some of this group decide they want to have a seance because the boy who works for the Astors was like drawn to the sea and said he heard like sirens or voices. And so they're like, there's something funky, maybe ghosts or something. So let's have this seance. And then something bad happens. And it's just, there's this eeriness. Of course there's eeriness surrounding the Titanic, but this is more. It's going to be a horror, I think. I think that's what it's categorized on Goodreads as. So it's just feeling eerie and creepy a little bit because there's something supernatural going on and we don't quite know yet. So I'm only like 50, oh no. I am 95 pages into this book, honey. Okay, that's good for me. But now we're done with the 1912 timeline and we're back to 1916 with Annie working on the Britannic. So we'll see what happens. I'm intrigued. I'm not like super loving it yet, but we shall see. I'm about 2/3 into the deep. I don't have much to update you on other than there's just this sense of eeriness and creepiness on the boat. We are getting many different characters' perspectives, and each of them are kind of accusing somebody else of having this spirit within them. And so we don't know what's what and what's real. There's this occultist on the ship, and he's kind of leading people to believe that this is true and there is a spirit, and it's just, I don't know, it's interesting me, it's intriguing me, but I'm kind of just like, is something actually gonna happen, or is it just gonna be this questioning that there is really some sort of spirit on board. And then how is that going to come into play? How is the spirit going to come into play when the boat sinks? Like, are they going to blame it on the spirit? I don't know. We're going to see. I'm definitely going to finish it. Keep going. But yeah, we just had a time jump back to 1916, so I figured I'd come in and let you know how it's going. It's all right. So I had a bit of a drive today, and on my drive I was able to finish The Deep, and you know, it was just okay. The only thing that really kept me reading was the fact that it was on the Titanic, and I wanted to know how these people ended up when the ship was sinking and afterward. So it was definitely supposed to be like a ghost story, a haunting story, and I just don't think that that's necessarily for me. However, I still wanted to know what was going on. So I'm gonna give it 3 stars, I think. I'll let it sit with me for a little bit and see if that feels like a good rating, but I'm glad I read it, I guess. So yeah, 3 stars for that one. And then I was able to start this book, which is A Million to One by Adiba J. Gadar. This is a young adult, and it seems like we are following 4 different young women. They are all very poor and living in Dublin. One of them seems to be like the ringleader of them all. She decides that they're going to pull off the biggest heist ever. They're thieves, by the way. That's how they get by thieving in Dublin. So Josefa, I believe is her name, decides that they are going to board the Titanic and steal a book. A ruby encrusted book that's super rare and worth a lot of money. And she pulls in all of her friends, and they're going to get onto the Titanic and steal this book. In the first chapter, she has stolen her ticket, and now she is just kind of gathering her brigade of gals to pull off this heist with her. So I think I might like this one. I'm enjoying the writing so far, listening to it, I guess, but could be fun. See how they pull this off. So we're 6 days out from the anniversary of the Titanic sinking on the 14th, 15th, and so I'm needing to really speed up my pace a bit on reading these Titanic books. So I have a couple of updates. The first is in A Million to One. I'm about halfway through, hoping to finish it today, but I'm really enjoying this one. I like that this one is different than the others in that it shows different cultures. It is not just about white people on the Titanic. We are seeing Josefa and Violet, which they are white, but then we have a main black character who is from Haiti and also has some French heritage, and then we also have an Indian main character. And so I love that we are seeing some diversity aboard the Titanic. Obviously we know it was there. I feel like most of the stories are whitewashed or from white people, especially from the movie. So this is going really well. They are aboard the Titanic. They have met the person who is transferring the book from Ireland to the US, and they also have met that person's helper. I don't know what it's called, like a manservant kind of thing. But that manservant has history with Josefa, so I'm assuming that they are going to pair up and try to get this book. But some other fun things, like they're exploring the vent system in the Titanic and just trying to get to first class as much as possible so they can learn more about the book. It's called the Rubaiyat, this book, and I have no clue if it's actually a real thing or not. I should do some research. But because I needed to keep going with my books, I also started A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice. I was nervous to read 2 books at once because I feel like I might get them confused, but this is definitely more just a story, a literary story, and also focuses on the Carpathia more than the Titanic. It's maybe split evenly. So this one says it's based on the remarkable true story of the Carpathia, the one ship and the legendary captain who answered the distress call of the Titanic. But in the first 50 or so pages that I'm at right now, we are going back and forth in the chapters from people on the Titanic and people on the Carpathia. The Titanic stories follow young girls, again, which is making me confused with A Million to One, but it's 3 young girls who are traveling together and they meet a 4th, and they all have the same names. There's 2 Marys and 2 Kates, and it's really confusing, and I don't know why the author has chosen to do that, but I think they're based on real characters, so I understand, but that's a bit confusing, and also reading these 2 at the same time is confusing me. However, the Carpathia story mostly focuses on the captain and how he is aboard his ship and all of his officers and the guy who does all of the signals. What's that called? Signal operator. So we're focusing more on the workers or the operators of the Carpathia. And we've gotten to a very critical moment. The captain on the Carpathia is just being awoken with the CQD, the distress call from the Titanic. And he's like, is this real? Are you serious? Are you absolutely certain that we need to turn back and go save the Titanic? And the guy's like, yep, gotta do it. So it's about to get exciting, I think. Anyway, in the middle of these 2 books, but like I said, only 6 days left, and we are going to begin watching the Titanic. I love this movie. I have a history with this movie. I would always watch it when it was on TV, and I always would seem to turn it on right when all the bad things were happening to Jack and Rose, when they were below decks and the water was coming up, and it just absolutely terrified me. But then when I got into high school, I remember watching it with a couple of friends multiple times. Like, we were obsessed with the Titanic a little bit too much, and like we would play games as to how many times Rose said Jack, or how many times Jack said shit, or all of these weird things, almost like drinking games, but we didn't drink. Anyway, so I love this movie. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but I'm gonna watch it again. I'm at home over my lunch hour, and I wanted to watch this movie with Willie, but when I brought it up to him last night, he was like, that movie scares me. I can't do that. He has kind of a claustrophobia, like, or being in places that he can't escape. So obviously this movie is not good for him, but I am going to go ahead and start the movie. Same spot, different day. I have 2 things to tell you about. I finished Titanic late last night, the movie, I should say, and it's good. It just has nostalgia for me. I know that the acting isn't great because both Leo and Kate were very young when this movie was filmed. And so, yeah, they definitely weren't in their acting prime. But I still love the movie. I love the story it tells. I love that it's a flashback from this 101-year-old woman telling her story, and I love the movie so much. So I'm glad I watched it for this vlog. I also finished A Million to One by Adiba Jagadar. I'm gonna end up giving this one 3.5 stars. I was a bit disappointed with the fact that we mostly focus on the thievery. We don't, I mean, obviously this ship is the setting of the heist, but I don't know. I went into reading Titanic books for a focus on the Titanic, and I feel like this is more a mystery thriller than the historical story of the Titanic, which is fine. And I mean, authors can set their books wherever they want, and the fact that this is on Titanic obviously had its complications, but I wanted it to be more Titanic focused, I guess. The ending was a little bit cookie cutter. I'm not gonna tell you who survives, if they all survive, who doesn't survive, but it just seemed so happy of an ending to me. And yes, there were happy endings of people on the Titanic, but I think overall it was a horrible event, and I didn't like I don't know, I shouldn't say I didn't like the ending of Hope, but it just felt a little bit too romantic of an ending. I don't know. So it was fine. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I liked the the aspects of the girls all coming together. They each had something to bring to this heist because one was a artist and could remake this book or redo the cover. What's that word? Replicate the book very well because she was a great artist. One was a circus performer and she could contort her body in ways and was able to climb through the vents in the Titanic. And one was an actress, so she was really great at getting information out of people by pretending to be somebody else. So they all just had different qualities that came together to make a really great team. So that was fun to read about. And when they were trying to escape, some of the guys chasing them, it was fun, but just not exactly what I was looking for. So 3.5 stars for this. And now I've just got my 2 physical books. There's no audiobooks for either A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice or The Long Night by Diane Ho. So I'll just have to read physically for the next few days about Titanic. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. 2 updates for you. I chopped off all my hair. What do you think? I like it. I was getting sick of my long hair and wanted to go shorter, so we did it. Secondly, I am about 2/3 of the way through, maybe just more so halfway through A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice by Rebecca Connolly, and I'm really liking this one. One thing that sets this one apart from all the other Titanic books I've read this month, however long this video has been going on, the sinking of the ship is like here, like 60 pages into the book. The sinking of the ship has already happened, it's done, and all the rest is the aftermath. And I feel like we don't get the aftermath of the sinking of the Titanic at all in any of the retellings I have read. Like, you get a little bit of it in the movie. Rose gets saved by the Carpathia, but otherwise it's really glossed over. And so I love that we get the perspective of the Carpathia and, like, literally in detail how they are rescuing the survivors from the water and bringing them up to the Carpathia's deck. And it is just devastating. You see true and utter horror and devastation in these people's faces, and this author is doing a really great job of describing all of it. So I'm really enjoying it. I've had tears in my eyes multiple times, especially when she brings up, like, children without their parents. That is just hitting me. So anyway, I'm going to keep reading this one. It's so easy to read. I mean, content isn't easy, but just the way it's written, it's very readable. So I'm really, really enjoying this one. I just finished this lovely, lovely story. I am giving it 5 stars. I really appreciated the perspective that this book had and how we got the story from the ship that saved the ship that sank. Like, I feel like Titanic stories obviously always focus on Titanic, but we don't see the aftermath and everything that took place in order for those 705 survivors to get back to land. So I think where I left off, they had, just gathered the survivors, and some things that I just took note about this Captain Arthur Rostrum. He's amazing. The fact that he just, like, so selflessly gave his life and his ship and his crew to saving the passengers of the Titanic was beautiful. Some things I appreciated that happened on the Carpathia after the rescue. I enjoyed seeing the worship service they had the day of the sinking, April 15th. They gathered everyone with a Catholic father and, or maybe it was a Protestant father, and then they had a Catholic father help. But either way, they had a church service where they thanked God for the survivors, but then also remembered those that perished. And then they had like a funeral for 4 men who were rescued from the sea, but then later died. So I appreciated seeing that side of it, because while it was a horrible and tragic event, there were still 705 people that survived, and they could give thanks for that. I also enjoyed seeing the wireless messenger. Why do I keep forgetting that term? Wireless operator, there we go, and how tirelessly he worked in order to get the survivors' messages to their family. And yeah, I just appreciated all of the little nuggets that we learned about that I feel like I had no clue about. It was real, it was raw, and it was a rescue mission that Arthur Rostrom didn't need to go on. There's actually many ships in the area. Actually, I should show you. There were many ships in the area that didn't go help. The Californian, for one. People thought that they saw the Californian sailing by, but didn't come to help. So you can see, here's the Titanic, and the Carpathia was all the way down here. And the lengths he had to go through to get there, he went through this huge ice field and nearly could have sunk his own ship by hitting ice. So it was fascinating to hear this story. I feel like it was so historical. It felt like I was reading a nonfiction, which the author, Rebecca Connolly, has an afterword at the end that kind of gives us tidbits on each of the characters that she notes, but she tells their real endings and what actually happened, and then she talks about the liberties she took in order to tell this story and the way she had to fictionalize things. But then, like, there was a real Kate Connolly, and there were 2 Katie Connollys. Remember how I said at the beginning that was confusing? Well, there were 2 of them, and there was this horrible mix-up at the end when one Kate Connolly survived and one didn't, and the families were confused as to who was alive and who wasn't. So that was just a really interesting story, and I think the whole point of this vlog came to fruition. Like, I wanted to hear the stories of those that perished to honor them, but I also wanted to hear the stories of those that survived to celebrate with them. And I loved everything that this story gave. So if there are any other stories about the Carpathia that you know about, or even nonfiction, I would love to hear about it. Arthur Rostrom, the captain of the Carpathia, has wrote a book. And I think it's more of like a memoir, but definitely talks about this rescue mission. So I might want to look into that. I don't know. I'm so entranced by this story, and I feel like reading about it just gets me more excited about it. So this is done. Now we have to move on to the last book of the vlog, which is the one I know least about because I just had it on my shelves randomly. It's probably one I picked up at a library book sale, and I think it's like a romance. I honestly feel like it's going to be very similar to the movie rendition of the Titanic. So we shall see. I am 100 pages into The Long Night by Diane Ho, and I'm enjoying it. There are a few main characters that we're following. The first is Elizabeth, and she is the daughter of a very wealthy American couple. She is betrothed to be married to another wealthy man, 10 years her senior, and she does not want that. She wants to be able to go to college and learn for herself, become a independent woman, and her parents do not want that. So it is her goal on the Titanic, on the crossing over, to convince her parents that she wants to go to school and not marry this man. And then we also follow Katie. She is in steerage, going from Ireland to New York to try to make a name for herself. She wants to become a singer, but people around her don't think that she'll be able to do that. She probably will just likely be a governess. But she is accompanied by two gentlemen who are, again, hoping to make some money in the United States. And then lastly, we're following a gentleman who looks like he should be in steerage, but he is actually a first-class passenger. There was a mix-up with Elizabeth and him. What's his name? Max. And I think that there's going to be some love interest between Max and Elizabeth. I also think that Katie down in steerage will have maybe a love triangle with the brothers. I guess not a real triangle, but both Brian and Patty, the brothers that are accompanying her, have feelings for Katie, I think. So it's gonna definitely be more romance than anything. But there's also some good discussion on how first class treats steerage, and there was just an instance actually where some first class passengers were on a tour of the ship and were basically gawking at the third class passengers like they were in a zoo. And Elizabeth was on that tour and she thought it was despicable. She was so embarrassed that her people were doing this to the third class passengers, and Katie actually said something to them about it, like, what are you doing? We wouldn't be allowed to come do that to you, so why are you doing that to us? We're humans too, etc. So that was interesting. So here's the deal, folks. It's the 14th and this video is supposed to come out today, so I'm not going to complete this book for this vlog, but I'm gonna keep reading it today and tomorrow, and I feel like that's fitting to honor the Titanic because tonight is the night that it struck ice. So I'm just gonna keep reading today and tomorrow and live into the Titanic story. I'm outside. I don't know if you can hear some of the geese honking, but there was one other Titanic experience that I wanted to share with you. And actually, I think it was called the Titanic experience. When I graduated high school, my parents took me on a trip down to Florida. We went to Harry Potter World, Universal Studios, and then we also found that the Titanic experience was there. You could go and see artifacts that had been recovered from the Titanic. You could see all of the names that were listed. You could touch an iceberg that they had engineered the temperature of what the waters would have been like that night in 1912. And it was just like a really cool experience for me. I had grown up loving the Titanic, watching the movie, learning about it in different ways, and so my parents took me to this and I just loved it. It was a humbling experience because you touch this iceberg, you realize that these people froze to death in this cold, and you were lucky enough that you could take your hand off of the iceberg, but others weren't able to get out of that situation. And so it was a very melancholy, sombering experience. There were also the list of all 2,200 passengers, and the 700 that survived were like in bold or something, and so you saw the 1,500 that perished that night. So that was just a really cool experience. I also got a necklace that day for both me and my friend Jessica, who loved watching the Titanic together. It was a necklace that had a piece of coal in it, and they said that the coal was from the Titanic. I don't know if I believe that. I wish I still had the necklace, but in all of our moves since that point, I have lost it. I wonder if Jessica still has hers, but it was just a really great experience to kind of live through the experience, hear the story historically, and see some of the artifacts that had been recovered. So, but definitely that ice chunk that we could touch really made it real. So that's what we've got. I'm gonna pass it over to outro Becca. And here I am to wrap up this vlog. Out of these 5 books that I read, I think my definite favorite was A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice by Rebecca Connelly. It was the most realistic to me, and that's what I wanted, I guess, out of all of these Titanic stories, is what truly happened. And we got that. And we got especially the aftermath of what happened after the sinking of the ship. I think Rebecca Connelly said it really wonderfully in the very end of her book. Captain Arthur Rostrom was talking with one of his officers and said that they would be forgotten when history looked back on the Titanic and her tragedy. The Carpathia might be recollected as the vessel who picked up the survivors, but the details of her journey there, the people involved in the rescue, and all that had transpired would fade when set against the more pressing, terrible facts and stories of that night. That was as it should be. Those who were lost should be honored and revered. Those who were saved should be treasured and known. I hope I did some honor to those who foundered in the Titanic that night and also those who survived. It was a wonderful experience reading all of these different stories, and I hope you learned a little bit more about the Titanic and everything that occurred around that historic event. If you have any other books about the Titanic or the Carpathia or anything else surrounding this event, I would love to hear about it down in the comments. Please list any books or your experiences with the Titanic down below, and I would love to have some conversation with you there. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video on your way out. Consider subscribing to my channel if you'd like to see more bookish and bullet journaling content from me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!